So, welcome everybody to today's edition of CESI Talk. CESI Talk is a series of interviews, video interviews we are doing in the frame of a project, WeEP. And WeEP is designed basically to bring the European institutions, but also European policies, and in particular the policies of the European Parliament closer to our members and their affiliates. And the reason is also because we have very often the feeling that when our, let's say, citizens or our workers look at the European Union, that the image they have is too often negative. And we want to highlight also really the acquis, the social acquis, the social, let's say, performances of the social progress the EU has brought to citizens and to workers. And that is why we have launched this series of interviews. And today I'm particularly pleased to have with us Jaume Duch. Jaume Duch is spokesperson of the European Parliament, so there's not a better person to be interviewed today. And you are, Mr. Duch, regularly chairing press briefings on the activities of Parliament's plenary meetings and support the President in his relations with the media at different occasions. Mr. Duch, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy about this interview, this possibility you are offering to me.
We've had in a very difficult year and a half, and there have been a lot of surveys from Eurobarometer also, which showed that the pandemic has made citizens reflect on the future of the European Union. And it seems also that the citizens actually want more EU. But when we look back at this year and a half, do you think has the EU met the expectations? Did it deliver? Did it succeed? Did it fail? Or is it, as always, let's say, a two-sided story?
In fact, as you say, the polls are telling us that the support from citizens to the European Union is now higher than ever. But at the same time, it's also true that a huge part of this majority is asking for reforms. It's not absolutely happy about the way the European Union is run. So from one side, yes to the European Union, this message is clearer than ever. At the same time, yes to another kind of European Union or a better European Union. And it's logic because the pandemic is exposing weaknesses in society and in citizens too. And that's why the citizens want to change. The disparities has increased. 114 million jobs were lost in 2020 because of COVID. So it's obvious that we have to react to this situation. I must say also that what the European Union has been doing, including the European Parliament, this last year and a half, it's really important. It's even crucial. I mean, the next generation EU, the 750,000 billion euros, the sure instrument to support jobs affected by coronavirus. But we need to go further in the reforms, and in this case, I would say also in pushing social policies.
You've answered the next question already partly, because you mentioned that the citizens want actually more EU, but they want more reforms. We had lately a session with Dubravka Šuica, Vice President of the European Commission, on this famous conference on the future of the European Union. It's entitled "Our Future" or "Your Future is in Your Hands." Which is the importance of such an initiative? Are we promising too much, or is it something which is realistic and which may actually yield real results in both in terms of closeness, but also in terms of maybe reforms?
We will see. The conference can be very important, but only if it's successful in creating first a real debate between citizens, a debate between the citizens and the institutions or the representatives of the institutions. If there are concrete conclusions, and last, but not least, if these conclusions are implemented by the EU institutions, it's great to create a debate. This debate is necessary, probably is timely also because of COVID, but it cannot be just a debate. You cannot ask the citizens to come with their ideas and to take part in this process, and then at the end nothing happens. That's why the European Parliament is so focused in what will be next after the conference. How are we going to transform the result of the conference in something concrete? Yes, people, respondents in our polls also are, first of all, they are asking for this debate to be organized, but they are also very interested in knowing what will be the decisions, what will be the conclusions of that. So yes, it's timely. It's maybe the best possible moment to strengthen democracy in the European Union, and this means opening the doors fully to citizens. But again, this cannot be merely, a mere listening exercise. We need something concrete right afterwards.
Mr. Duque, you mentioned the Next Generation EU. You mentioned SURE. Can you give some examples where you think that the EU or the European Parliament has actually brought or pushed forward social rights or the social rights acquis to the benefit of workers, of our members in this case also?
Well, you know that in the last years, of course, Parliament and Council have adopted a lot of European legislation increasing the level of protection of citizens, in this case of workers in the European Union in many areas. And as you just mentioned, and myself, the last maybe is this SURE program, 100 billion euros that are really helping now in all the member states people to avoid being jobless because of COVID. But I think that now the most important is what's next. And there the Parliament is, I would say, quite satisfied about the Porto Summit, which took place a couple of weeks ago. President Sassoli was there. He also signed the Porto Social Commitment. And let me remind you the three goals, because I think that they are quite ambitious compared with what was the social policy of the European Union in the past. Unemployment rate of at least 78% for the whole European Union, at least 60% of adults attending training courses every year, and then to reduce, and I think that this is maybe the most important element, to reduce the number of people at the risk of social exclusion or poverty by at least 15 million people, including 5 million children. It's not enough, or it won't be enough, but this can be an interesting and a very important step forward. We need also to still working with the Council and with the Commission about the adequate minimum wages directive. We have to work about the child warranty. We have to continue to give workers and the representatives of these workers a strong voice, because the only way to go forward with this kind of legislation is to do this in contact, or I would say even together with the social representatives, with you, with the trade unions.
Exactly. So you said the workers and the representatives need a strong voice. Maybe it's sometimes, we are of course convinced of our own importance, but to hear also from other people, other key players or other interests, what is according to you, what has been now during the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic, on the after pandemic crisis which we will have to face, what is the particular role or importance of trade unions according to you?
I would say that it is to help us get the right balance between the three main priorities of the European Union for the next years. When you ever look to this famous Next Generation Recovery Plan, but also when you look to the budget for the European Union for the next 7 years, you see a lot about environment and Green Deal. You see also a lot about digitalization, how to transform the economy in a more modern system, call it like that. But there is also a third priority, which is the social policy of the European Union. And my fear, and I think that this is the fear of the Parliament, is that we all focus a lot in these two first priorities, the Green Deal and the digital economy, and we forget a little bit the third branch, which is the social policy. So who can help the European Parliament to create enough visibility for this third element? Of course, the trade unions, people who represent workers all over Europe. I think that this is the essential role now. There will be a huge amount of money to be invested in the next years. We need to be sure that this is done respecting the three priorities and not just the first two of them.
Mr. Duc, you're also Director General for Communication at the European Parliament. I mean, one of the key issues also, we spoke about the conference on the future of Europe, but for you also is to bring the activities of the European Parliament closer to citizens. What is the European Parliament doing to communicate its activities to citizens? I know that there are lots of activities, but also maybe just a short notice on how you consider activities we are doing today at this very moment. What is the importance of such activities?
We are convinced since a couple of years that communication cannot be only in the hands of the institutions. By the way, myself as a citizen, what I want is to receive the information about what happens in the world through the media and not exactly coming from the institutions themselves. Of course, we play a very important role on that because, as you know, and you said, I mean, we still need to get a more informed social community in the European Union. I still think that the priority has to be working with the media. I'm really convinced that if you want to be heard, but I would say 80 or 90% of the population, you need to work with the media. But it is true now that because of, all these platforms and all these online technologies which are at our disposal, we are in the situation of being able to create dialogue with those citizens who are, let's say, more interested than the average in what the European Union is doing or what the European Parliament is working on. And that's what we are trying to do through many activities. But you said something which is very important and that we experienced during the last European elections, and it's the fact that we as an institution, we need allies. We need people who are working in different concrete fields that help us to communicate or to be in contact with those other citizens who are interested in those concrete issues. So it's not just about the Parliament communicating, it's also about the Parliament helping all these organizations, all these entities, the trade unions also to cooperate in this work, which at the end of the day, it's important for all of us because the European Union is there to stay. But we need to transform the European Union also in a political field. It's not just about the institutions. It's not just about the decisions taken. It's also about the role to be played by the citizens themselves.
Mr. Duc, to close today's interview, you as I would say spokesperson of the European Parliament of an outstanding European institution, but also as a citizen, what are the biggest challenges now the EU will be facing in the coming years, according to you?
This is my personal opinion here, but I think that after COVID and looking a little bit around the member states and how societies and the governments have been trying to respond to the situation, the first priority will be to defend the real sense of the European Union, to try to avoid that big part of society thinks that the European Union is there just for money, for programs, for getting funds, for investment, the internal market. No, the European Union is or should be much more than that. The European Union is a community of values. The European Union is founded on the principle of solidarity, and my fear is that sometimes this message is not arriving in a crystal clear way to citizens, and there we risk to transform or to reduce the European Union to something that it was not in the thinking or in the papers of the founding fathers. But of course, it's also about the concrete priorities, those that are linked to the times that we are living. So as I said before, there is now a lot about economic and social recovery. There is a lot about environment. There will be also a lot about trying to find the most possible or the best possible way to cope with migration, with the negative elements of globalization. All these things are there. But again, and I think that this would be my last message today, for that we need the citizens. We need to know what the citizens think. In 2021, it's not just about voting every 5 years in the European elections. It's about finding the way to participate. And this could be the Conference on the Future of Europe, hopefully, yes, but this is also through all these intermediates, all these stakeholders that work around the European Union, including, again, the trade unions.
Luke, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the interview. All the best to you. Keep safe, and we hope to see you in person then as of September.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you very much. And stay safe.
Have a good day. Huh?
You too. Have a good day. Bye.